Gentlemen, there comes a time in every man's life when he's tested, not by battle or business, but by betrayal, emotional betrayal, silence, disrespect. When a woman hurts you emotionally, verbally, or through neglect, you are given a choice. You can react, or you can respond like a man of value, and when you respond with control, not chaos, that's when she realizes who you really are. Don't chase with, draw your presence. This is one of the most powerful responses a man can make when a woman disrespects him, hurts him, or begins to take him for granted. Most men, when they feel emotional pain from a woman, immediately react. They chase, they explain themselves, they try to fix the situation, not realizing that this emotional reaction only makes things worse. When you chase after someone who has hurt you, you're essentially telling them, "You can treat me poorly, and I'll still be here." That communicates low value. It tells her that your self-worth is negotiable, that your presence can be bought with crumbs of attention or shallow apologies. And the truth is, the more you chase, the more she loses respect for you. Women are biologically and psychologically wired to respond to strength. Emotional, mental, and spiritual strength. They don't respect men who beg. They don't respect men who can't walk away. When you withdraw your presence, you do the opposite of what she expects. She expects you to call, to double, text, to ask her what's wrong, to try harder, and when you don't, when you calmly, confidently step back, she's forced to sit with the silence. That silence speaks volumes. It sends a message that your time, your energy, your love, and your presence are privileges, not guarantees. This isn't about playing games or manipulation. It's about self-respect. It's about understanding that your presence is valuable and that anyone who wants to stay in your life must treat it with care. When you stop showing up, stop responding, stop investing your emotional energy, she will notice. And that's the moment when she starts to reflect, not because you demanded her to, but because she suddenly feels the absence of what she once took for granted. Presence isn't just physical, it's emotional. When you pull back emotionally, stop overthinking, stop checking her stories, stop feeding energy into her drama. You reclaim your power. You take all the energy you were giving to her, and you invest it into yourself. That shift creates a magnetic pull. A high-value man is rare. A man who can walk away with grace, without bitterness or theatrics, is even rarer. When you walk away not to punish her, but to protect your peace, that's when she realizes she was dealing with someone different. Someone not easily replaced. Withdrawal also creates clarity. When you're always available, always trying to fix things, you can't truly see her for who she is. But when you step back, the emotional fog clears. You start to recognize patterns. You see whether she truly valued you, or just used you as an emotional crutch. You see whether she tries to make it right, or just moves on like nothing happened. That's the truth you need. That's what silence brings. It brings answers without having to ask the questions. This act of withdrawal must come from a place of inner strength, not from anger or ego. It's not about teaching her a lesson. It's about teaching yourself what you will and will not tolerate. It's about becoming the kind of man who doesn't need external validation to feel worthy. A man who knows that his presence is his power. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not because you're weak, but because you finally understand your value, control your emotions, be calm, not cold. This is where the real test of your strength lies. When a woman hurts you, your natural instinct might be to react. To lash out, to say something sharp, to show her that you're not someone to be messed with. but reacting emotionally, especially in a heated or impulsive way, only shows that she still has power over you. It reveals that her words or actions are controlling your behavior, and the man who allows his emotions to be manipulated isn't leading the interaction. He's being led. That's the exact opposite of masculine energy. Being calm doesn't mean you're unaffected. It means you choose your response with intention. It means you feel the sting, but you don't let it dictate your next move. You observe, you breathe, and you act with clarity, not chaos. This restraint, this emotional discipline, is what sets you men apart. Most women have dealt with emotional men who throw tantrums, guilt, trip them, cry to be accepted, or spiral into drama. They've seen that. What they rarely encounter is a man who can absorb the emotional hit and still maintain his center. That man instantly earns respect, even if she doesn't show it outwardly. Being calm isn't passive. It's active control. You're choosing not to yell. You're choosing not to argue. You're choosing not to get pulled into a back and forth that goes nowhere. Instead, you let your actions speak. You set boundaries through behavior, not through emotional outbursts. You show that you're not here to beg for validation. You're here to be respected, and if you're not, you'll quietly leave, and that silence hits harder than any argument ever could. But there's a difference between being calm and being cold. Coldness is bitterness wrapped in silence. It's emotional withdrawal rooted in revenge. That's not strength. That's pain acting like power. A truly calm man doesn't need to punish. He simply detaches. He doesn't become passive-aggressive. He becomes unavailable, not in a spiteful way, but in a self-protective, dignified way. He no longer reacts to the chaos because he's no longer part of it. When you learn to stay calm under emotional pressure, you also gain clarity. You start to see what's really happening beneath the surface. Instead of getting caught up in the drama, you observe patterns. You recognize whether she's lashing out from immaturity, insecurity, or manipulation. You're no longer blinded by your own emotional fog. You see her more clearly, and more importantly, you see yourself more clearly. You become aware of your triggers, your emotional defaults, and how to override them. This is emotional mastery, and this calm presence changes the way people treat you. A man who doesn't flinch, who doesn't chase, who doesn't explode, becomes a mystery. He becomes someone who can't be predicted, and what can't be predicted becomes powerful. It draws curiosity. It forces others to evaluate their behavior around you. Women may not consciously understand why they respect a calm man, but they do. They feel the depth, the emotional maturity, and the sense that you're not playing emotional games. You're operating from a place of solid self-worth. In a world full of noise, stillness is rare. And the man who can remain still while the storm is raging around him is the man who controls the outcome. Emotional control is not about bottling things up or pretending you're fine. It's about acknowledging how you feel and choosing not to let it lead you off course. It's about making peace with your pain internally so you don't have to project it externally, and that, more than anything, will show her and yourself your true strength level up in silence. When a woman hurts you, whether through disrespect, rejection, betrayal, or simply taking you for granted, most men waste their energy trying to get closure, prove a point, or win her back. But the truly powerful man takes a different route. He turns inward. He doesn't announce his pain to the world. He doesn't seek validation from friends or social media. He doesn't go out of his way to show her what she's missing. Instead, he disappears, not to hide, but to evolve. He goes silent because his focus has shifted from her to himself. This isn't about ignoring your emotions. It's about using them as fuel. Pain is an incredible motivator when channeled correctly. When you take all the energy you were pouring into her, thinking about her, texting her, waiting for her to call back, wondering what went wrong, and you redirect it into your purpose, everything starts to change. You start building. You wake up earlier. You work out harder. You eat cleaner. You read more. You dive into your craft, your career, your mission. Every ounce of frustration becomes a brick in the empire you're building. And the key here is silence. Not because you're trying to manipulate her into noticing, but because real transformation doesn't need an audience. You don't need to post about your grind. You don't need to throw quotes on your story or show off that you're doing better. That kind of behavior still revolves around her. It's a cry for attention dressed up as strength. True strength moves in silence. It doesn't announce the comeback. It lets the results speak when the time is right. While you're leveling up, she might assume you're sitting at home sulking. She might think she broke you, that you're waiting for her to come back. But when she sees you weeks or months later, healthier, sharper, more focused, surrounded by better energy, it hits differently. Not because you tried to make her jealous, but because you made peace with what happened and used it as a catalyst. You didn't let it destroy you. You let it define a new standard for who you're going to be. And that's the quiet revenge, not to hurt her, but to grow so far beyond the version of yourself that tolerated less than you deserved, that you'd never even consider going back. Every time you hit the gym when you didn't feel like it, every time you worked on your goals when you were tempted to text her, every time you chose self-discipline over self-destruction, you were separating yourself from the man you used to be. And that separation creates clarity. You stop obsessing over what she did. You stop trying to understand her choices. Instead, you start understanding your own patterns. Why you stayed too long. Why you ignored red flags. Why you thought you needed her to validate your worth. And through that understanding, you begin to evolve. Leveling up in silence is a declaration to the universe that you no longer need to be seen to be significant. You don't need applause. You don't need permission. You've made a private decision to become a better man, not for her, not for revenge, but because you finally realized you were made for more discipline, more purpose, more peace. And once you step into that mindset, there's no going back to who you were before the pain. The silence becomes your sanctuary. The grind becomes your therapy, and the results become undeniable. Women, especially those who thought they had emotional control over you, don't expect this. They expect the usual, the pleading, the "I miss you" texts, the late night calls. They expect to remain the center of your attention. But when you vanish, not out of pettiness, but because you're too busy becoming your best self, it forces them to question everything. It forces them to wonder how they lost access to a man who used to give them everything. And that realization, when it comes, is far more powerful than any argument, explanation, or emotional plea. So you keep building, you keep growing, you stay quiet, and when the time comes, when the results begin to show, on your body, in your mindset, in your aura, people will notice. She will notice, but by then you'll be so far ahead, so rooted in your growth, that her recognition won't even matter, because you didn't level up for her. You leveled up for the man you were always meant to become. Don't explain your worth. Let her feel the loss. When someone you've invested in disrespects you, doubts your value, or treats you like you're replaceable, The most instinctive reaction is to want to defend yourself, to try to make them understand what they had, to spell out everything you brought to the table. You want to list the sacrifices, the support, the patience, the loyalty. You want to shake them into seeing what they lost. But the truth is, trying to explain your worth to someone who dismissed it never works. It actually has the opposite effect. The more you try to convince someone of your value, the less they value you. Because real worth doesn't come with explanations. It comes with presence, and more importantly, with the absence of it. When you walk away without giving a speech, without sending a final paragraph explaining your side, without trying to change their mind, you shift the entire dynamic. You go from being the one trying to be understood to being the one who's simply no longer available, and that creates a void that no one else can fill quite the same way. See, most people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. It's not until your energy is missing from their life that they start to notice the difference, the lack of encouragement, the lack of emotional support, the lack of stability, laughter, strength, or whatever it was you brought consistently. It doesn't hit them immediately, especially if they took you for granted for a long time, but it creeps in slowly, through moments of silence, through emotional gaps, through unmet needs. That's when they start to feel your worth. Not when you begged them to see it, not when you posted a glow-up photo, but when they sit with the emptiness and realize you're not coming back, that you're not trying to fix what they broke, that you've accepted the disrespect and made a private decision to remove your energy without permission, apology, or performance, and that silence, your absence, starts doing the explaining for you. It's tempting to want closure, to say, "I was good to you," or "you'll miss me one day." But words like that usually fall on deaf ears, because if she already underestimated you while you were giving your best, she's not going to suddenly understand it because you tell her. People learn through experience, and when someone experiences life without the value you provided, that's when they start to connect the dots. But by then, if you've done it right, you won't be waiting for her to figure it out. You'll be too busy living a life where your value is recognized and respected without having to be explained. Your value isn't in what you say about yourself. It's in how you carry yourself, in how quickly you're willing to walk away when your boundaries are crossed, in how little tolerance you have for disrespect, in how unwilling you are to fight for a place in someone's life who made you feel like a burden. When you stay quiet and keep your dignity intact, you allow the truth to do the talking. You give her space to realize on her own what she may have destroyed or neglected, and that realization always hits harder when it comes without your help. Letting someone feel the loss of you doesn't mean you wish harm or hope they suffer. It simply means you know your worth so deeply that you refuse to stand anywhere it's not being honored. And you trust that your energy, your love, your loyalty, your presence, they all speak loud enough without having to be explained. A man who understands this never lowers himself to beg for understanding. He simply disappears, and his absence speaks the words his mouth never had to. You don't need to announce your exit. You don't need to post cryptic messages online or make sure she sees how unbothered you are. That's still rooted in needing her attention. Real detachment means your peace matters more than being seen. It means you trust in silence more than you trust in speeches. And when you operate from that place, not only do you protect your dignity, but you also become unforgettable, not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. Maintain your frame. Never let her emotional chaos become your emotional reality. When a woman hurts you, disrespects you, or throws emotional grenades your way, The most critical test of your strength is whether you can hold your frame. What does that mean? It means you remain grounded in who you are, regardless of what she says, does, or projects onto you. It means you don't get pulled into her emotional roller coaster. You don't start questioning yourself just because she's upset. You don't allow her moods, her games, or her manipulations to shake your inner core. Your frame is your psychological, emotional, and masculine center. And when you lose it, you lose everything. The average man reacts. She's distant, so he panics. She's angry, so he becomes defensive. She starts crying, so he forgets the disrespect and immediately tries to comfort her. And in doing that, he abandons his own boundaries. He abandons logic. He forgets what she did and becomes more focused on fixing her emotions than holding her accountable. That is how men lose their power, not through weakness of body, but through weakness of frame. When you can't stand firm in your values and your truth because you're afraid of how she'll feel, you're not leading, you're following. You're not stable, you're bending, and no woman can respect a man she can emotionally control. Women, often unconsciously, will test your frame. They'll push buttons. They'll create drama, not necessarily because they're malicious, but because they want to feel your strength. They want to know, can this man handle me? Can he remain composed when I'm being emotional, difficult, or unfair? The moment you break down with them, the moment you argue back at their level or try to reason with pure emotion, you've already lost. You've entered their world instead of remaining rooted in your own. Holding your frame doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean ignoring her emotions. It means not letting them override your logic or disrupt your peace. When she screams, you stay calm. When she tries to guilt-trip you, you stand your ground. When she uses tears to make you forget what she did wrong, you offer compassion, but not capitulation. You don't let sympathy blind you to truth. Your boundaries remain intact even when she tries to blur them. That's what strength looks like. It's not about domination. It's about being immovable, being unshakable, being able to witness chaos and not become part of it. That's how a king operates. The world might burn around him, but he rules his own mind. Your frame is also about knowing who you are and what you want, clearly. If you know that respect is non-negotiable, then no amount of beauty, no level of attraction, no emotional history should ever make you tolerate disrespect. When she tries to pull you into games, you don't play. When she tries to make you jealous, you don't respond. When she gives you the silent treatment, you use that silence to reflect, not to chase. That is frame. It's not reactive, it's responsive. It's based on self-respect, not emotional dependence. When you hold your frame long enough, one of two things will happen. She will either rise to meet you there, maturing emotionally, showing you more respect and valuing your presence, or she will distance herself because she cannot control you. Either way, you win, because the man who holds his frame filters out the chaos and attracts alignment. He doesn't beg for peace, he embodies it. And a woman who is truly ready for a man like that will feel safe, not in his submission to her emotions, but in his ability to remain solid no matter what storms arise between them. This isn't just about women. Holding your frame is about life. People, situations, and circumstances will always test your composure. You will always be tempted to react, to get emotional, to lose sight of what you stand for. But the more you practice maintaining your frame in moments of pressure, the more powerful you become. You become a man who leads himself, and by extension, a man who can lead others. You become dependable not because you always have the answers, but because you never lose yourself trying to please or pacify anyone else. This kind of strength is rare, and that's why it commands respect, not just from women, but from everyone around you. When you can remain calm, grounded, and unshaken in the face of emotional chaos, you send a signal, one that says, I am not easily moved. I am not here to be manipulated. I know who I am. And once you truly embody that mindset, very few people will ever try to test you again. Because your frame becomes your shield, and the world responds accordingly. Walk away with dignity, not resentment. One of the most powerful responses a man can have when a woman disrespects him or causes emotional pain is to remove himself, not in anger, not in a fit of drama, but with calm certainty and complete composure. Dignity is about knowing your value so deeply that you refuse to stay where it is not seen. It's about making a decision to leave not because you want to hurt her, not because you're trying to teach her a lesson, but because you finally realize that staying is no longer in alignment with the man you're becoming. Most men struggle with this. They either stay too long, hoping she'll change, tolerating behavior that chips away at their self-worth, or they leave in bitterness, venting, shouting, slamming doors, or sending emotionally charged messages trying to justify why they're done. But both of those responses are rooted in emotional attachment. Staying too long shows dependency. Leaving in rage shows you're still seeking validation. Real power, however, is in walking away clean. No theatrics, no guilt trips, no dramatic exits, just silence backed by unshakable self-respect. When you walk away with dignity, you send a message that doesn't need to be spoken. You're not trying to convince her of what she lost. You're not waiting for her to chase after you. You're simply saying, through your actions, that your peace is more valuable than her presence. That you'd rather rebuild alone than remain in a space where your love, loyalty, or effort is being taken for granted. And that message, delivered through absence, not words, is louder than any argument ever could be. Resentment is heavy. It lingers in your body, your thoughts, your energy. It poisons future relationships. It becomes a weight that you carry into new experiences. When you leave with anger, when you replay the betrayal, when you keep talking about what she did and how unfair it was, you're still giving her control over your mind. You're still anchored to the past, but when you leave with peace, with your emotions in check and your pride intact, you free yourself. You step forward with clarity, unburdened. You no longer need to win the narrative. You no longer need to be understood. You simply know your truth, and that's enough. Dignity also changes the memory. When a woman reflects on the way you left, it impacts how she sees you. If you left with anger, she'll remember the chaos. If you left begging or pleading, she'll remember the desperation. But if you left calmly, confidently, without blame or bitterness, that stays with her. It haunts her in quiet moments, because it shows emotional strength. It shows leadership. It shows that you are a man who doesn't need to be cruel to be clear, who doesn't need to be loud to be heard. That kind of exit leaves an imprint not just on her, but on anyone watching. This doesn't mean you suppress your pain. You still feel it, you still process it, but you don't let it twist you into someone you're not. You don't let it harden you or make you spiteful. You let it sharpen your standards, not darken your heart. You let it teach you what to avoid, what to accept, and most importantly, how to honor yourself before expecting others to do the same. And dignity doesn't mean you pretend like nothing happened. It means you respond in a way that elevates you rather than diminishes you. You have the right to walk away with your head held high, not because you won the argument, but because you chose not to stay in a place where your value wasn't met with equal respect. It's not about ego. It's about self-preservation, about protecting your future self from the damage that comes from lingering in disrespect, The man who walks away with dignity isn't emotionally detached. He's emotionally disciplined. He knows that his time, attention, and love are valuable, and he won't invest them where they're mishandled. He knows that healing doesn't happen through revenge, but through release, through choosing to step into a new chapter without dragging the wounds of the last one. He knows that closure isn't always given, it's chosen, and he chooses it by walking away, not in pain but in power, not to punish her but to honor himself. And that kind of decision, rooted in self-worth and emotional maturity, is what separates men who keep repeating cycles from men who truly evolve. So in the end, when she hurts you, you don't need to react with anger, desperation, or performative strength. You respond with calm, with clarity, and with unwavering self-respect. You show her, not through words but through actions, that your love is a privilege, not a guarantee, that your presence is earned, not owed. And when you walk away without bitterness, holding your dignity intact, you don't just protect your peace. You remind her, and the world, exactly what kind of man she lost. Let your silence be your statement. Let your growth be your revenge. And let your worth be something she never gets the chance to question again.